The story of the Black Jesus of Nubia is a tale that stretches across centuries, continents, and cultures. A narrative woven into the very fabric of early Christianity, African identity, and the forces that have shaped global religious traditions. To understand why the Black Jesus of Nubia was erased and why this truth became forbidden, one must journey into the heart of ancient Nubia, explore the profound roots of early Christianity in Africa, and examine the tides of conquest, colonization, and cultural transformation that swept across the land. This is not just the story of a lost image or a forgotten icon. It is the story of a people, their faith, and their struggle to preserve their legacy in the face of overwhelming odds. Long before the rise of European empires and the spread of Western Christianity, there was Nubia, an ancient African civilization that thrived along the banks of the Nile, encompassing parts of what are now southern Egypt and northern Sudan. Nubia was a land of kingdoms, kings and queens, renowned for its wealth, its warriors, and its rich cultural traditions. It was here, amid the sands and the sun-drenched stone of Meroë and Napata, that Christianity first found fertile ground on the African continent. By the 5th and 6th centuries, Christianity had taken root in Nubia, and the region became home to some of the earliest Christian communities outside the Roman Empire. Archaeologists have uncovered churches adorned with vibrant frescoes and icons, many of which depict biblical scenes and figures with unmistakably African features. Among these images is that of Jesus himself, portrayed as a black man, dressed in the robes of a teacher, haloed in gold, and surrounded by disciples and saints who share his African visage. These images were not mere artistic flourishes. They reflected the lived reality of Nubian Christians, for whom their faith was both a spiritual path and a source of cultural pride. In the bustling cities of Dongola and Faras, the image of a Black Jesus was a familiar and revered symbol, a testament to the universality of Christian teachings and the dignity of African identity. But as the centuries passed, the world around Nubia changed. In the 7th century, the armies of Islam swept out of Arabia, conquering Egypt and pressing into Nubia. The Nubians, skilled archers and fierce warriors, fought valiantly to defend their land and their faith. For centuries, they maintained an uneasy truce with their Muslim neighbors, preserving their Christian traditions even as the Islamic world grew ever more powerful. Yet over time, the pressures of conquest, trade, and political change began to take their toll. Islam gradually supplanted Christianity as the dominant faith in the region, and the once thriving Nubian kingdoms faded into obscurity. The great churches fell into ruin, their frescoes crumbling and fading beneath the relentless sun. The image of the Black Jesus, once so central to Nubian spiritual life, began to disappear from memory. The erasure of the Black Jesus of Nubia, however, was not solely the result of military conquest or religious suppression. It was also shaped by the rise of European colonialism and the spread of Western Christian traditions. When European explorers, missionaries, and colonial officials arrived in Africa centuries later, they brought with them a version of Christianity that was deeply intertwined with their own cultural assumptions and prejudices. In European art and iconography, Jesus was most often depicted as a white man, his features molded in the likeness of the artists and patrons who commissioned the works. This white Jesus became the standard in churches, cathedrals, and homes throughout Europe, and later, in the new colonies of the Americas, Asia, and Africa. The Black Jesus of Nubia, whose image had once graced the walls of African churches, was not only forgotten but actively suppressed, its very existence a challenge to the Eurocentric narratives that had come to dominate Christian thought. This process of erasure was not accidental. It was part of a broader effort to redefine Christianity as a specifically European and eventually a white religion. In the colonial imagination, Africa was often portrayed as a land of darkness and paganism, its people in need of salvation and civilization. The acknowledgement that Africa had its own ancient Christian traditions, its own saints, martyrs, and images of Christ, threatened to upend this narrative. The colonial powers sought to legitimize their rule by presenting themselves as the bearers of civilization and the true faith. To do so, they had to erase or marginalize the indigenous religious traditions that stood in their way. The Black Jesus of Nubia, with his African features and his deep roots in the land, became a forbidden truth, a relic of a past that colonial authorities preferred to forget. This erasure was perpetuated not only through force and coercion, but also through the quiet mechanisms of education, art, and scholarship. Missionaries established schools and churches that taught African children to revere the white Jesus of Europe, while dismissing or ignoring the histories and images of their own ancestors. European scholars wrote histories of Christianity that began with Rome and Jerusalem, treating African Christian communities as mere footnotes or curiosities. In the broader culture, the image of a white Jesus became so pervasive that it was difficult for many to imagine any alternative. Generations of Africans grew up seeing only European depictions of Christ, his pale skin, blue eyes, and flowing hair, while the Black Jesus of Nubia was relegated to the realm of myth and legend. Yet, beneath the surface, the memory of Nubian Christianity persisted. In remote villages and among the descendants of Nubian peoples, stories were passed down of the time when Jesus walked among them, when their churches rang with hymns in the ancient Coptic and Nubian tongues, and when their faith was a source of strength and identity. In recent years, there has been a resurgence of interest in reclaiming this lost heritage. Scholars, artists, and activists have begun to uncover the forgotten history of Nubian Christianity and to challenge the Eurocentric narratives that have long dominated religious discourse. Archaeological discoveries have brought to light stunning frescoes and icons that testify to the vibrancy of Nubian Christian art and to the reality of the Black Jesus who once inspired generations of African believers. This movement is not merely an academic exercise, it is a powerful act of cultural reclamation. By restoring the image of the Black Jesus of Nubia, African communities are asserting their rightful place in the story of Christianity and affirming the dignity and worth of their own traditions. They are challenging the notion that faith must come wrapped in the trappings of foreign cultures and are insisting that their own voices be heard. The story of the Black Jesus of Nubia is also a reminder of the dangers of forgetting, of how easily history can be rewritten and identities erased when power and prejudice go unchallenged. It is a call to remember not only the achievements of the past, but also the struggles and sacrifices of those who fought to preserve their faith and their culture in the face of adversity. To understand the full significance of the Black Jesus of Nubia, one must look beyond the surface of history and delve into the deeper currents that have shaped African and Christian identity. For at the heart of this story is a profound truth, that faith is not the property of any one people, nation, or race, but a universal gift, one that takes root in every land and speaks to the deepest hopes and aspirations of humanity. The earliest Christian communities in Nubia developed their own unique forms of worship, theology, and art. They built grand cathedrals, adorned with intricate mosaics and paintings, and produced theological texts that blended African traditions with the teachings of the gospel. Their faith was not a pale imitation of European Christianity, but a vibrant and living tradition in its own right. The image of the Black Jesus was central to this tradition. For Nubian Christians, Jesus was not a distant or foreign figure, but a savior who shared their humanity, their struggles, and their hopes. His blackness was not a mere accident of geography, but a sign of his solidarity with his people, a reminder that the divine could be found in every face and every land. This vision of Christ was profoundly empowering. It affirmed the dignity of African identity at a time when the world was often hostile to their existence. It provided a source of strength in times of trial and persecution, and a beacon of hope for generations of believers. But as Nubia fell to the forces of Islam and later to the pressures of European colonialism, this vision was increasingly marginalized. The new rulers sought to impose their own religious and cultural norms, erasing the traces of the ancient Christian heritage that had once flourished in the land. The Black Jesus of Nubia became an inconvenient memory, one that challenged the official narratives of both colonizer and conqueror. The suppression of Nubian Christianity was accompanied by the systematic destruction of its art and architecture. Churches were abandoned or converted to other uses. Frescoes were defaced or allowed to decay. The knowledge of the old ways was lost as elders died, and new generations were taught to look elsewhere for spiritual guidance. Yet, even in the face of such adversity, remnants of the old faith persisted. In hidden places, in whispered stories, and in the secret prayers of the faithful, the memory of the Black Jesus endured. It lived on in the rhythms of Nubian music, in the patterns of traditional dress, and in the quiet confidence of those who refused to forget their heritage. The rediscovery of the Black Jesus of Nubia in modern times is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of memory. Archaeologists working in the deserts of Sudan and Egypt have uncovered churches and tombs that bear witness to a lost world, a world in which African Christians worshipped a savior who looked like them and who spoke to their deepest hopes and fears. These discoveries have sparked a new wave of scholarship, as historians and theologians seek to recover the lost chapters of African Christian history. They have inspired artists and activists who use the image of the Black Jesus as a symbol of resistance and pride. And they have challenged believers of all backgrounds to reconsider the meaning of faith and the ways in which it is shaped by culture, history, and power. The story of the Black Jesus of Nubia is not merely a matter of historical curiosity. It has profound implications for the present and the future. In a world still scarred by racism and inequality, the image of a Black Jesus stands as a powerful reminder of the universality of the Christian message and the dignity of all people. It calls upon the global Christian community to confront the legacy of racism and exclusion that has too often marred its history. It challenges the faithful to embrace a more inclusive and diverse vision of the church, one that honors the contributions of all its members and recognizes the richness of its many traditions. It is also a call to African communities to reclaim their own spiritual heritage, to celebrate the achievements of their ancestors, and to draw strength from the knowledge that they have always been an integral part of the story of Christianity. The erasure of the Black Jesus of Nubia was not inevitable. It was the result of choices made by those in power to privilege certain narratives and images over others. But just as history can be rewritten, so too can it be reclaimed. By uncovering the forbidden truth of the Black Jesus, we open the door to a richer, more inclusive understanding of our shared human story. The journey to reclaim the Black Jesus of Nubia is far from over. It is a journey that requires courage, patience, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. It demands that we listen to the voices of those who have been silenced and that we honor the memories of those who have gone before. But it is also a journey filled with hope. For in the image of the Black Jesus, we find a powerful symbol of resilience, dignity, and love. A symbol that speaks to the deepest yearnings of the human heart. As we remember the story of Nubia and its lost savior, we are reminded that faith is not a static or unchanging thing. It is a living tradition, shaped by the experiences of countless generations and capable of renewing itself in every age. The Black Jesus of Nubia may have been erased from the official histories and the walls of churches, but he lives on in the hearts and minds of those who seek truth, justice, and the affirmation of their own humanity. His story is a testament to the enduring power of faith and to the unbreakable spirit of a people who refuse to be forgotten. To truly grasp the forbidden truth of the Black Jesus of Nubia, one must also confront the ways in which history has been used as a tool of domination and control. The erasure of Nubian Christianity was not merely an accident of time. It was a deliberate act intended to reshape the identities of entire peoples and to legitimize new systems of power. The colonial project was, at its core, a project of erasure and replacement. Colonizers sought to overwrite the past, to impose their own values and beliefs, and to create a world in which their authority was unchallenged. In this context, the image of a Black Jesus was not simply inconvenient, it was dangerous. For if Jesus could be Black, if Christianity could flourish in Africa long before the arrival of European missionaries, then the entire edifice of colonial ideology was called into question. The supposed superiority of European civilization, the justification for empire and exploitation, and the very foundations of racial hierarchy were all threatened by the truth of Nubian Christianity. It is no wonder, then, that the Black Jesus of Nubia was consigned to oblivion. His image was painted over, his memory suppressed, and his followers marginalized. The official histories that emerged from this era reflected the interests of those in power, while the voices of the oppressed were silenced. Yet, the truth has a way of resurfacing. In the quiet persistence of oral tradition, in the stubborn survival of ancient churches, and in the courage of those who refuse to forget, the memory of the Black Jesus endures. Today, as the world grapples with the legacies of colonialism, racism, and exclusion, the story of Nubia and its savior is more relevant than ever. It challenges us to look beyond the narrow confines of our received histories and to embrace a more expansive vision of who we are and where we come from. It invites us to honor the diversity of human experience, to recognize the contributions of all peoples to the story of faith, and to build a future in which every voice is heard and every tradition respected. In reclaiming the forbidden truth of the Black Jesus of Nubia, we do more than restore a lost chapter of history. We affirm the possibility of a new beginning, one in which the wounds of the past are healed and the richness of our shared humanity is celebrated. The path forward will not be easy. It will require honesty, humility, and a willingness to confront the shadows of our own histories. But it is a path worth taking, for it leads to a deeper understanding of ourselves, our faith, and our world. The Black Jesus of Nubia may have been erased from the pages of history, but he lives on in the dreams and aspirations of those who seek justice, truth, and reconciliation. His story is a beacon of hope, a reminder that, no matter how powerful the forces of erasure may be, the truth can never be fully silenced. As we remember Nubia and its lost savior, let us also remember the countless others whose stories have been forgotten or denied. Let us commit ourselves to the work of restoration, to the building of a world in which every person is seen, valued, and affirmed. For in the end, the story of the Black Jesus of Nubia is not just a story about the past. It is a story about the future, a future in which the fullness of our humanity is recognized and the light of truth shines for all to see. Let us carry this story forward, not as a relic of a bygone age, but as a living testament to the power of faith, memory, and the unbreakable bonds of community. In this spirit, may we find the courage to reclaim the forbidden truths of our own histories and to build a world in which every image, every voice, and every life is honored. The Black Jesus of Nubia was erased, but his legacy endures. It endures in the hearts of those who remember, in the hands of those who rebuild, and in the voices of those who refuse to be silenced. May his story inspire us all to seek truth, to love justice, and to walk humbly with our God. If this story moved you, share it with someone still wandering. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And if you carry a legend, a memory, or a haunting, leave it below. Perhaps your story will be the next ritual.